Everything you know about Carthage was written by the people who burned it to the ground. Their books, their gods, their version of who they were, gone. For 2,000 years, we only had Rome's story. But Rome got one thing catastrophically wrong. The Carthaginians were not who Rome said they were. They were not even who they said they were. And we only know this because of something Rome could never destroy. In 2025, scientists pulled DNA from over 200 people buried across the ruins of the Carthaginian world, from Spain to Sicily to the coast of Tunisia. What they found rewrites a story we thought was settled. People who vanished from the history books, but never from the ground beneath them. Their blood was still there, waiting. This is the version Rome spent 2,000 years trying to erase. Picture the Carthaginians, and whatever you see, Rome put it there. The cruel merchants who sacrificed their own children, the treacherous enemy, the villains of Hannibal's war. Every word of it came from Greek and Roman pens, because the Carthaginians left us almost nothing in their own voice. They had libraries, hundreds, perhaps thousands of books, in their own language, a language of wisdom and trade and seafaring. When Carthage fell in 146 BC, those libraries burned with the city or were handed to foreign kings and scattered until they crumbled to nothing. Of an entire literary civilization, Rome chose to save exactly one book, a manual on how to farm the soil. Think about that. We are about to meet a people we were never supposed to hear from, and the only reason we can is buried in their bones. If you want stories the victors tried to erase, take 1 second to hit like. It's the only thing that tells YouTube to show this to people who'll never find it otherwise. But here's where the story breaks. Because in 2025, when geneticists finally read what was written inside those bones, the bodies told a story that didn't match a single word Rome, or even Carthage itself, had left behind. They weren't who anyone said they were. To understand what Rome erased, a team from Harvard and the Max Planck Institute did something no historian could. They went to the graves, 14 ancient sites scattered across the entire Carthaginian world: Spain, Sardinia, Sicily, the Levant, and Carthage itself. From the bones of over 200 people, they pulled something that had survived everything Rome did: DNA. Genetic code, 2,000 years old, still legible. Everyone knew what they would find. It was obvious. The Carthaginians were Phoenicians. Everyone agreed on this. They spoke a Phoenician language. They wrote in the Phoenician alphabet. They worshipped Phoenician gods: Baal, Tanit. Their own founders had sailed from the Phoenician homeland, in what is now Lebanon. So the DNA would obviously trace back to that coast, to the Levant, to the founders. It didn't. The DNA of the people of Carthage had almost no connection to the Levant at all, almost none. The founders' bloodline, the very people who supposedly built this civilization, was barely there, as if the Phoenicians had given Carthage everything: their language, their gods, their entire identity, and almost none of their genes. The lead geneticists called it the first known case in history where a people's culture and their ancestry completely failed to match. A civilization that remembered itself as one thing, and whose blood said something else entirely. which leaves the question Rome never asked and could never have answered. If the Carthaginians didn't come from the Phoenician homeland, then where did they come from? The answer was hiding in the bones, and it pointed in a direction nobody expected. The closest genetic match to the people of Carthage wasn't the Levant at all. It was Sicily and the Aegean, the world of ancient Greece. The people who fought Greece for 3 centuries for control of the Mediterranean were, by blood, largely Greek and Sicilian themselves. Then came a second thread. As Carthage rose to dominate its world, a new ancestry entered the mix from the local peoples of North Africa. So this is what a Carthaginian actually was. Not a transplanted Phoenician, but a blend. Aegean, Sicilian, North African, woven together under one language, one religion, one flag. The first truly cosmopolitan civilization on Earth. And the mixing wasn't local. It wasn't that Carthaginians in Sicily married Sicilians, while those in Tunisia married Africans. The same blend appears everywhere, all across the empire, evenly, as if the entire Mediterranean were one connected bloodstream, one people in constant motion, sailing, trading, settling, marrying, from Spain to the African coast. The geneticists had a name for it, a Mediterranean highway. And on a highway, people move, families spread. A son sails west, a daughter sails east, and the sea swallows the distance between them. The researchers knew this happened. They just never expected to catch it. Until 2 skeletons, buried on opposite shores of that sea, turned out to be telling the exact same story, the same blood, the same family. Among the 200 genomes, the researchers began comparing individuals, one against another, looking for matches, for relatives. And they found them. Not parents and children in the same graveyard that you'd expect. They found 2 people who shared an ancestor, second or third cousins, close enough that a few generations back, their families had been one. One of them had been buried at Birgi, on the island of Sicily. The other lay at Kerkouane, on the coast of Tunisia. 2 graves, 2 different countries, over 100 miles of open sea between them. And the same blood running through both. Think about what that means. Somewhere, generations earlier, one family had split. Some sailed north to Sicily. Some stayed on the African shore. They lived their lives, never knowing the other branch existed. And then they were gone. For over 2,000 years, no one knew they were connected. No one knew they were anyone at all. Until a machine read their DNA and quietly placed them back into the same family tree. Rome burned the city. Time scattered the bones, and the blood remembered anyway. Which brings us back to the impossible question. If the people of Carthage weren't Phoenician by blood, how did they stay so perfectly Phoenician in everything else? The same gods, the same alphabet, the same name for themselves for over 600 years. The researchers think the answer changes how we understand culture itself. Picture how a company spreads across the world today. It doesn't ship its own people to every city. Someone local buys in. They take the name, the recipe, the entire identity, and they run with it, even though they came from somewhere completely different. That, the scientists suggest, is what Phoenician culture became. A franchise, an identity so powerful that people of Greek, Sicilian, and African blood adopted it whole and called themselves Canaanites and meant it. And here's the strange twist. The very success of that culture may be why its founder's bloodline vanished. A handful of original Phoenicians arrive. The idea catches fire. Thousands adopt it. And generation by generation, the founders' genes are simply swallowed by the crowd that loved what they built. The culture won so completely that it erased the genetic trace of the people who started it, long before Rome ever arrived to finish the job. So we are left with a people erased twice over. First, by their own success, the bloodline of the founders dissolved into the empire they inspired. Then by Rome, the city burned, the libraries scattered, the voice silenced, until all that remained was the story their enemies chose to tell. 2,000 years of history, written entirely by the winners. But there was one thing neither the franchise nor the fire could touch. Not the books, those were lost. Not the monuments, those were rubble. Something quieter. The code inside their bones, waiting in the ground, in Sicily and Spain and the Tunisian coast, for a technology no Roman could have imagined. And when it finally spoke, it didn't give us Rome's Carthage. It gave us theirs, a vast, mixed, restless, deeply human people, cousins scattered across a sea, finally named again. It makes you wonder how many other histories we've only ever heard from the side that won. How many vanished peoples are still down there, waiting in their own bones for someone to finally listen? Who do you think we should bring back next? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. The winners write the histories, but the dead, it turns out, still keep their own records. I'm Vanished Worlds. Until next time.